Hello and welcome to the Rockies Now podcast. We are a Colorado Rockies podcast. If you are joining with us today, make sure you can follow us at Rockies Now on all of your social media platforms. Thanks for joining with us today. I'm your host, Steven, along with Tom, along for the ride. We're ready for the new year. Happy New Year's, Tom. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. I just got over being sick for the last 5 days, but I'm coming along just fine. How are you doing? Hi, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year as well. Yeah, I'm doing great. I feel like Christmas, I told this to a bunch of my coworkers. I feel like Christmas went by way too quickly. Christmas Eve felt like just yesterday, and then we're already in the new year. But hey, who's complaining? We're excited for this new year, and hopefully some positivity here in Colorado for your Colorado Rockies. Despite the bleakness and the doom that we've had over the last few years here in Colorado. But no, we're excited over here. We hope that you guys like the new look for our podcast. We have a new logo on Instagram and on X as well, and Threads and all that. So I hope you guys enjoy that. It's going to be our new look moving forward, not just for this year, but moving forward. So we hope you guys like it. It's a little bit more of a professional look. We're growing here at Rockies now, and we're excited about that. And hopefully you guys saw our little update that we put on our social medias the other day. But yeah, we're excited. We're gonna have a fun year. So to start off our first podcast, our first show of the new year, I want to talk about. Let's talk about some resolutions for the Rockies. And now we might have talked about it briefly on a few episodes back when we were getting ready for New Year's, but first thing first, we're going to talk about something that came up on X, and I'm going to pull it up here on my little iPad right next to me. So shout out to Brooksgate on X for tweeting this out, and he's been doing a very good job over there while I pull that up. So this caught my eye, and I think a lot of people, Rockies fans, noticed this, and they were commenting on it and letting us know what their thoughts were. So Brooksgate 3 days ago tweeted this out, showing a graph of total WAR accumulated by each team, for the draft picks, that is, for the last 10 years. And so number one, no big surprise, the Houston Astros were at number one with a 110.4 F4. And they had 51 players that reached Major League Baseball, reached the Major League level. And again, no big surprise, winning, two World Series championships, technically one asterisk. And then, Tom, we go down to number 30, and we're in depresso mode. Our beloved Colorado Rockies are 30th in baseball over the last 10 years in terms of draft picks, with a 9.8 F4 in the last 10 years. That's hurtful to hear as a Rockies fan. And despite over the last few years where the Rockies have had pretty solid drafts, this past year getting Charlie Condon, and the year before that Chase Dollander, and the year before that Gabriel Hughes. The Rockies have gotten really good, talented players. It's just that unfortunately a lot of these players have either not panned out or just had not even reached the big league level, and that's very concerning as a Rockies fan. And so our hope is that the Rockies can continue to build a farm system. And I think looking back 10 years ago, the Rockies never were really ranked number one prospect on the board. I think there was a few other teams during 2015, 2016 where they were ahead of the Rockies. The Rockies were up there in the top 5, top 10, but some of those prospects never panned out. I mean, there's some pitchers that the Rockies drafted during those years that I've never even heard of, right? And I forget the name, but I was looking at previous drafts. I'm like, I never even heard of that guy. And for instance, a guy that we know and we've talked about briefly on this podcast, Riley Pint, who was a very highly talented pitcher in high school. The Rockies drafted him, I think right around the time, just before they drafted Kyle Freeland. And Riley Pint, unfortunately, hasn't turned out here in Colorado. Now, it doesn't mean that he never will. It's just that his performance has not been very well to put up good WAR for the Rockies. And so it's unfortunate to see that the Rockies are ranked dead last in the last 10 years in terms of WAR as for these prospects. So our hope is that the Rockies, again, continue to draft well. We're seeing a lot of improvements in the farm system. And we will also mention that Scott Oberg, former Rockies closer and pitcher, will be a part of the Rockies pitching coordinating staff in the minor league. So that's excellent news. Patrick Saunders tweeted that out today. So congrats to Scott. And it's good news. And I know he was already working in the Rockies farm system over the last few years, which is great to hear. So before we move on to the next subject, Tom, what are your thoughts on this little graphic here? Because it doesn't paint the Rockies in a good light whatsoever.
Well, first of all, just wanted to make a real quick comment about Scott Oberg. Good for him. Happy to see him back. I always say my favorite Scott Oberg moment was him making the final few outs in that 2018 National League wildcard game at Wrigley Field. And I'll never forget that final pitch, basically a picture-perfect changeup to Albert Almora Jr. to seal the victory. So, Scott, congratulations. Glad to see you're officially back in some form, in some on-field position or game strategy involved position with the Rockies. Great to have you back. So congratulations to him. But this graphic, it's kind of it just kind of paints teams. It really puts into perspective a team's drafting and how they evaluate players. Now, again, I always say it's projecting a player's future is not an exact science, just like player development is not linear. There's no one way to do it. There's no easy way to do it. There's no book or guidelines specifically on how to develop the perfect prospect or the perfect major leaguer. If there was one, then everybody'd be successful. And if you look at every single draft year after year, there's studs, there's duds, more duds than studs, because again, we all baseball pragmatists know how difficult it is to reach the major leagues. I picked a random recent draft in the last 10 years. I went with 2018. Here's a couple of names that people may recognize. The number 3 overall pick, Alec Bohm of the Phillies. He was picked in that draft that year. Tristan Casas of the Boston Red Sox. He was picked that year. You look at guys like Nico Horner, the Chicago Cubs. For the Chicago White Sox, Nick Madrigal. You also had Jared Kelenic of the New York Mets. Jonathan India, the Cincinnati Reds. He was drafted that year. Let me see if I can find one more top name. For the Rockies, Ryan Rollison. We drafted him first round that year. Or for the Cleveland Indians, now Guardians, Bo Naylor, Josh Naylor's brother, who is also in the majors. Again, those are some of the names that have reached the majors, but if I read off all the other names of that first round, all but one player that I read off to you hasn't reached the majors, and probably not to be a negative Nancy, won't reach the majors. Because again, for every one, I would like to say for every one prospect that reaches the majors, at least 100 or a few hundred have to not reach the majors. That's how high a failure rate it is. But looking at this list here, down in the bottom third with the Rockies, the White Sox, no surprise, they're 29th. Right here, this guy right here can tell you exactly how awful the White Sox have been at drafting over the last decade. They've had some great picks, though, don't get me wrong, but they've had a lot of bad ones. Horrible picks. Mm-hmm. Now, again, I'm not saying I would have picked better players, but I'm just saying they've been bad. A couple of interesting ones that you wouldn't think would be there in the bottom third. The Mets, the Yankees, the Blue Jays are also down there, which is a little bit surprising. The Phillies at 21 are slightly surprising. I figured they'd be slightly higher. One shocker to be up in the top 10. I didn't predict to see the Cardinals. For some reason, I don't know. I guess this is just me, but I guess I haven't been paying much to their draft history. I'm surprised to see the number 2, but not against you, Cardinal fans. Don't come at me, please. Just a lot of their players at the majors recently have been from trades, like Arenado and Goldschmidt and all them guys. Yeah. But anyway, this is a pretty cool graphic, so thanks for finding it. But it does put a lot of things into perspective as to what teams are more advanced or more proactive when it comes to their scouting.
Yeah, and listen, the Rockies, plainly, they need to do better scouting. Now, again, they've done really well in the drafts, and I feel like over the last few years, the Rockies have found hidden gems in the draft. And especially, I told this to Tom, I feel like over the last few years, the Rockies have actually done pretty well in the middle rounds, rounds 10 through 15, rounds 10 to 20, where they've actually found hidden gems that have actually been panning out pretty well. I feel like Connor Eaton, who I believe was this year or last year, He's been looking pretty positive. I love it. And so I feel like the Rockies, they need to continue doing that. Where I feel like, Tom, over the last few years, especially even going back to even before that, a lot of the Rockies picks, especially in rounds, the first 5 rounds were hit and miss. Some of them hit, some of them were misses. Again, we're still finding out about Dolander. We're still finding out about Charlie Condon. Now, again, this is going to take time for these guys to develop. We get that. So we're not going to say, oh, Condon's a miss or a hit right away. For me personally, I think the one that out of the last few drafts, I think that's clearly a hit in my mind is Chase Dolander. I think that guy has a chance to be a really good pitcher. Now, there's going to be a lot of naysayers that say, oh, he's not going to do well at Coors Field. But you look at pitchers, free agent pitchers that have, well, maybe not free agent pitchers, but just random pitchers in baseball that have pitched at Coors Field. Max Scherzer has had decent numbers at Coors Field where he's actually done pretty well. Clayton Kershaw, when he was young in his career, pitched very well at Coors Field. And you don't want to talk about Madison Bumgarner, because if Madison Bumgarner was listening to this, he would not like it, because I remember whenever he came to Coors Field, he would absolutely get torched. But there are free agent pitchers, or I should say big league pitchers, that have done well at Coors Field. So I'm not saying Dolander is going to be that type of guy, but he has the stuff to be an elite pitcher in this league. And again, he was at one point the best pitcher in the draft a couple of years ago, ahead of Paul Skeens. And so your only hope is to have him get back to that level of hype, and I think that hype is there. It's just that he was overshadowed by Paul Skeens and going 1-1 over there to Pittsburgh. So, but yeah, it's unfortunate. And again, the Rockies are a young franchise, but still not really any excuses for this stat. But you do hope that the Rockies improve this. And last year the Rockies hired a top scout from Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's great news that the Rockies, they're trying to find ways to improve. They're not just sitting idly by and saying, oh, we're just going to let our guys do their job. No, they've been hiring out of the organization in small ways. Maybe not the ways that a lot of Rockies fans want or wanted, but they are hiring out of organization, which is good. So just little small things that we hope to see improve in 2025 for the Rockies. Another thing that we would like to see improve this year is just I guess strategy, and just focusing on the strength and weaknesses of the Rockies. And I think just to name off, the first one that's on my mind is offensively. The Rockies were pretty bad this past year in terms of offense, but it wasn't the absolute worst. Of course, the Rockies play in a ballpark where the ball flies naturally, right? If I pull up the stats here, the Rockies were 16th in baseball in hits, 7th in doubles. That's not too big of a surprise, especially at Coors Field. 12th in triples, 15th in home runs, which is an improvement, because I feel like correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but I feel like in 2023, the Rockies were either dead last or second to dead last in home runs. Because I think one year, I think it was either Cleveland or Washington in 23 had the least amount of home runs. Where the Rockies, they improved that this past year in home runs. So that was good. The Rockies, they're starting to get their power back, which is needed, because if the Rockies offense is going to carry them, not only that, but the pitching, I get it. But if the offense is going to get back to where we want it to be, to where it's actually scoring runs against top pitchers in the league, and not only in the league, but in the National League West, the Rockies have to score runs. They were 19th in RBIs, but this is when the bad stats pop out to me. So they were 26th in walks, so bottom of the league in walks. 29th in strikeouts. They strike out a ton. 1,617 strikeouts, 25th in stolen bases, and they were 23rd in on base percentage. So offensively, they weren't the worst, but they weren't good at all. So, yeah, and Ty points it out here in the YouTube comments. We have speed. We absolutely need power. Exactly. And I think a few years ago when the Rockies acquired Chris Bryant, they were hoping for that power to show up. And unfortunately, we've gotten nothing but injuries from Chris Bryant. And so Doyle, we're relying on him this year to have a big power surge, kind of like what he did this past year. Tovar, especially Toglia, Nolan Jones, we're hoping to have a comeback here. But also some of the young guys too, Hunter Goodman, Zach Veen, even maybe if he plays this year, which I think he will. The Rockies, they need to get the power back, because we've seen years past where they've had a top of the line offense because they have power in their lineup. Tulo, Cargo, even Todd Helton, when he was in his last few years, had some power left, despite not being much. It was more of a gap hitter. But you had guys, even Nolan Arenado, when he was coming up, he had power. So the Rockies, they need that to come back if they want to get back into contention, not just the pitching, but the offense too, because you go back in 2018 when the Rockies had elite pitching in the postseason, but no offense, right? So you got to get those bats in there. So yeah, that was the offensive numbers. And then quickly, before I turn it over to Tom here, pitching wise, it's far worse. And I thought it might be a little bit better, especially because of the young bullpen that we had shine later in the season. But in terms of pitching, the Rockies were 29th in wins with 61 wins, of course, and then 29th in losses, 29th, and then 30th in team ERA with 5.47, 30th in strikeouts, 20th in saves, 29th in innings pitched, 30th in hits allowed, 30th in earned runs allowed, 30th in runs allowed, and then 30th in home runs allowed, and 27th in walks. So simply to put it, the Rockies, they were horrible in terms of pitching this past year. And so that's got to improve. And pitching is the name of the game here in Colorado. It's been something the Rockies have been trying to solve for the entire existence over the last 30 years, right? Now, they have had years where they've had really good pitching. Like I mentioned, 2018 was a great year. Even parts of 2017, great pitching. And so if the Rockies want to get back into where they want to go of competing for a wild card spot or even a division, even though it seems impossible because of the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks and even the Padres in there, it's hard to compete in this division. But if you're going to compete, you got to have pitching. And I think this year we're going to see a lot of the young arms come up in the Rockies farm system and make their debuts. And I'm talking about the Chase Dolanders, the potentially Sean Sullivan, Carson Palmquist is another possibility. So yeah, it's the pitching bottom line has to improve. And I think a lot of these numbers, I think, could definitely go to the starting rotation. But I think part of it goes also to the bullpen, because if you go back and look at the bullpen at different parts of the year, it just did not do well. Justin Lawrence had a really down year after having an excellent 2023 season. A lot of guys had down years this past year, but also too injuries was huge into that. So we're hoping for that. So Tom, looking at these stats, what are you thinking? What are your thoughts heading into 2025 for offensively and pitching wise for the Rockies?
Well, to be honest, something that I would like to see from this team, it has nothing to do with stat lines or anything of that nature. I would like to see more patience, because when you have a young team or a team that's comprised mostly of young players like the Rockies do, or they're going to have a lot of prospects knocking on the door or making their way into the big leagues, you tend to see a lot of those guys get nervous. The butterflies are in their stomach and they try to do too much. When you do that, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, whether it's in the field or in the batter's box. So I just want to see these guys try not to do too much. Just be patient. Understand that this is a game of failure. You're going to have struggles. You're going to fail. But the measurement of it is, how do you learn from failure? How do you take the lessons that you learned from that failure and apply it to achieve success the next time? So that's what I want to see. I want to see patience, and I want to see adjustments. Because let's face it, there's not going to be any large expectations. We're not going to have the expectations of the Dodgers or the Yankees or now the Diamondbacks with Burns joining them, or any of those other contending teams. We're just going to sit back, relax, be patient, and watch and just play baseball with no expectations on our shoulders and just play the game. That's what I want to see. As far as the stat lines and everything goes, I think there's at least 4, maybe 5 guys that will be on the opening day lineup that can hit 25 plus home runs. So to address the comment from that we got from Ty, the potential for power is there. We just got to see it come out, and that comes from most of the lineup staying on the field for most of the season. So we'll see how that goes. And by the way, those 4 or 5 guys does not include Chris Bryant. So don't worry. We don't have to. We're not relying on him because, as I told you in our pre-show meeting, Chris Bryant, you're dead to me. I've invested too much in you. You destroyed my hot take last year. You are dead to me. All I expect from you is to play at least 90 games, please. Get to 90 games. Let's go. And then just do that. All right. I'm not going over 100 with you. That's not my hot take. So
Yeah.
anyway, the point is, like I said, this is a young team. Just enjoy playing the game. You're in the big leagues, and just let the game flow. Just do what. Just have a little bit of, like I said, just have some fun and be patient. That's all these guys need to do, I think, or
Yeah.
what I would like to see them do. Just try not to force things. Try not to do, or as they say, do too much, because then you're gonna have a lot more problems.
Yeah. And that's the one thing I hear about a lot when it comes to minor leaguers and some of the young players, because I hear a bunch of these guys where they're like, yeah, I had fun. We had a bunch of fun in Hartford or Albuquerque. And then once they reach the big leagues, it's like, oh man, I have to, perform this or I'm going to be sent down. Honestly, just have fun when it comes down to it. And I think a lot of Rockies players, Rockies legends, when it comes to Cargo and Todd Helton and some of the other guys, like they just mentioned how, despite in a bad season, how bad things were going, they just would talk about, hey, just go out there and have fun, right? And let the game take care of itself. And those guys are Rockies legends, man. And I feel like um, we need to see some of these prospects just go out there and have fun. Do what you do your job. Try not to don't imitate a guy that you liked in high school or college. Just be you, right? Just be, Jordan Beck. Just be Hunter Goodman, And so um, I'm looking forward to it. Looking at these numbers is just like, ugh, you don't want to look at these numbers, especially if, you're a big fan of some of the younger guys, because this past year was kind of like that first year we were starting to see some of the younger guys come up and actually get playing time. But yeah, the Rockies, plain and simple, they got to improve. And again, it's no big surprise, people. It's not like, oh, this is out of left field. This is a rebuilding year. And rebuilding teams, let's be honest, they suck. They go through these periods to where they're horrible, right? And so Rockies, they're in this, like we have in our title of the video. The Rockies, they're in a rocky rebuild, right? So we hope to see some sort of improvement in that, and I think we will. I think we're hoping to see some big seasons from some of our younger players, and we just hope that we don't see any fall offs this year or sophomore slumps. Kind of like the year we saw from Nolan Jones this year, which was absolutely like a gun punch to a lot of us Rockies fans, because we were looking forward to having Nolan Jones having a big year in 2024, maybe even be in a conversation of, MVP even for some people, but it didn't pan out. But we're looking to have big seasons from guys like that. Um, so just I guess another thing is just identifying the key players, and I think we already know who they are. I think Tovar has already been identified as a key player for the Rockies moving forward. Nolan Jones and even Zach Veen. I know he's not here yet, but just build around your core, man. And I feel like the Rockies, they need to solidify that, like by extending Britton Doyle, who I think is going to be a perennial Gold Glove. He already is a perennial Gold Glove center fielder. And as somebody mentioned just recently, that I think Britton Doyle is going to be the Nolan Arenado of center field. He's going to win all these Gold Gloves in center field. And the Rockies, they absolutely need to sign him to an extension. And I know some people are worried that the Rockies are going to trade him away for nothing. It's for me, it's a little bit of nonsense. And I know that a lot of people are frightened and scared about this, but listen, I fully believe that the Rockies, they know what well, in terms of the talent that they have, they know the guys that they need to keep. And I know that they've said in multiple times that they want to keep, Tovar and Doyle and Jones around for many, many years. And I think that's going to happen. And you just can't get rid of a guy like Brenton Doyle, man. So they got to identify their core. And then I would probably say, too, that the Rockies, again, focus on the draft, focus on trades. Even the Rockies, they haven't done a whole lot of that in recent years. They made a few trades, but they need to make more trades to acquire pitching that they like, or organizations that develop pitching very, very well. I would like to see a little bit more of that this year, whether it's at the deadline or in spring training, or heck, even before spring training, maybe the next few weeks before spring training starts. That's something I look forward to, that I want to see as a Rockies fan. Um, and also too, just have a plan at the trade deadline, because I feel like this past year, originally, both Tom and I, we were kind of disappointed the way the Rockies handled things at the trade deadline, until we found out later that there wasn't really a whole lot of trade interest whatsoever in Quantrill or Rogers. But just have a plan. Are you going to be trading, at the deadline? Should you have guys that you're going to be trading at the deadline already set up? Are you already making calls to different teams? And are there any trade assets for the Rockies this year? And I think there is, even though it might be a name that people don't want to see go. I feel like the Rockies have a chance, or have players in the farm system that has the possibility of switching out with this player. And some of you might know who that player is, but yeah, just have a plan, have an assessment, of what you're going to be doing this year. And then not only that, but have a long-term vision of what you want to do in the future, right? And I think that's important too. And I think that's what the Rockies have been doing over the last few years, ever since Bill Schmidt has stepped in the door of the GM office. I think he's been heavily focused on the draft, and we all know that. We've talked about that on the show. But I think the Rockies, they just need to talk over, okay, how can we be competitive? How can we open up that competitive window? How long can we keep that open? And how can we get there? Right. That's the big thing. And it takes time. It takes a lot of hard work and draft process and scouting. Right. And the Rockies, they're not going to be a team that's going to go out there in the free agent market and spend a bunch of money. And trust me, the Rockies, they have money. It's just that there have been times where they have not spent it well. And case in point, Chris Bryant. And as a matter of fact, I think Brooks Gay also mentioned this on their Twitter page. Over the last, I want to say 5-6 years, the Rockies have only signed one free agent to a multi-year deal, and that was Chris Bryant. And so really, a lot of people aren't happy about that. So really the only other option, if the Rockies aren't necessarily good at, signing free agents to multi-year deals, is to develop players. And that's by drafting, by trades, or whatever. Right. So that's what the Rockies got to do. Do what you got to do. And so that's what they're doing. And that's in the draft. And so as long as they know what they're doing and they do it well, that's fine by me. And obviously focus on improving each and every time when you go that route. But also too, I would say that there needs to be some sort of accountability, and I think we've seen that, especially in recent years. There's been a lot more accountability in the front office, where the previous GM, which we've talked about before on the podcast, the previous GM didn't have a whole lot of accountability, and so I feel like they need to be sharing their thoughts and what they think about this rebuild and where they think the Rockies are heading. Are there going to be any changes to philosophy or leadership in terms of the front office, or just in the team in general? We want to see a little bit more of that this year. Just like give us a direction. Where are we heading, or like where do we want to be next year or the year after that, right? And so honestly, it's kind of a bunch of mixed things in a package. But I think ultimately for us as Rockies fans, we just want to see a better season, in a complete package. And I think this year, again, no big surprise. It's a rebuild year. We're going to see a lot of changes. We're going to see a lot of new faces, a lot of newer players on the field. And I'm talking about younger players because, again, that's what happens in a rebuild. And even though this entire episode has been seemingly kind of dark or negative, there should be a lot of excitement, Tom, about the Rockies moving forward in the future, because I feel like the Rockies, say what you want about the ownership or whatever, but the Rockies, they have a chance to open up a really exciting window to where they can potentially get back to the playoffs, despite being in such a good division as the National West. So, yeah, Tom, what do you think? Like, with everything being said tonight, where do you think the Rockies need to focus on moving forward, looking into 2025 and beyond that?
Well, they have a goal and they have a vision. The goal is to definitely win a championship and
Yeah.
try to win multiple championships. The vision is how do you get the vision is, I think, is there to get to what it is. Question is getting there. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, we have some challenges. One of which is signing high-priced free agents, especially when it comes to pitchers. So other than draft and development, One thing I would like to see if I was the GM or working in the front office or I have Bill Schmidt's ear is I would try to get creative through trades, even if it means trading for for elite talent. I'd be willing to part with some of these top prospects. Our farm system is loaded with them. Because let's face it, not all these guys, whether they with us, with the Rockies or other teams, not all of them are going to reach the majors. Even some of the top ranked guys aren't going to reach the majors. I mean, I've commented about that earlier in this episode and on previous episodes. So the bottom line is, I think to get better, I know you have to analyze what areas you need to improve. The question is, if you find a player you want to acquire, let's say an elite bullpen pitcher or an elite starter. I'm just using it as an example. And that team wants X, 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 and Y and Z. Sorry, let me say that again. X, Y, and Z player. Now the question is player X, Y, and Z, are you willing to part with those players to get that elite arm? And quite frankly, if it really improves your bullpen or our bullpen or rotation, I'd be definitely willing to do that. Because let's face it, if we want, I think to put together an elite, a contending team, I think the Rockies are going to have to get a little creative. That's what a lot of teams do, even if it means taking chances on diamonds in the rough or trying to get bold and go after like I said, an elite, not an elite player, but probably a great player to improve our team or put the finishing touches on a contending team. I would just like to see the Rockies be a little bold. Don't play conservative. Again, this is going to be a year of development, as you alluded to. But when it's time to contend, let's not just swing for the fences and free agents and maybe overpay for a free agent or two. Let's take a swing at a trade or two.
Yeah, think outside the box. Yeah,
exactly. Let's get creative.
yeah.
So that's what. Again, like I said, I'm not harking on Bill Schmidt.
Mm-hmm.
He's an elder statesman. I'm to say the least here. I couldn't think of a better phrase, but not to say he's old, not to say he's old and just be completely old fashioned how he runs the team, but you know what? I hope maybe it'd be nice if he got bold and creative and try and improve this team. So again, as we've talked about, this team hopefully is forming its nucleus of players to form the core. The question is how bold is our front office going to be when it comes to putting the finishing touches on the next Rockies contending team? That's the big question. How bold can our front office be?
Yeah, and when you mentioned that, I immediately went to Nolan Jones trade. The Rockies, they traded Juan Brito, who was a top second base prospect. And arguably, if it wasn't for that trade, Juan Brito could be our second baseman coming into this year. But they traded him to Cleveland, and the Rockies got Nolan Jones in return. And see, that was a great trade. And now, granted, this past year might look like, maybe we got the wrong trade. No, listen, the Rockies thought outside the box. Nolan Jones has an elite 2023 season. And so that's what we need to see, just little things. We just want to see a little outside the box, be a little bit creative. Don't do the same thing you've always been doing over the last 30 years. Just be a little bit more creative, think outside the box. And so I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's just, I think the Rockies, they do have a plan. Just maybe be a little bit more creative. We've seen some teams do that, especially the D-backs did that not too long ago when they were right before they went on that run to the World Series, right? They of course, they made that extension to Corbin Carroll, right, which was great. But just make some creative moves, whether it's trading a prospect. And here's the thing too: if you look at the Rockies prospects, and I know some of them are not going to pan out, but if you look at the talent wise across the board of the Rockies prospects, and fans already know this, and they'll probably be like saying yes after I say this. The Rockies, they have a ton of outfield prospects, Tom. They could part with one of them, at least one of them, for a trade package and get some pitching in return. Now, granted, again, the Rockies, they don't like to think outside the box a whole lot when it comes to prospects because the Rockies, Tom, they love their prospects, and we all know that. The Rockies, especially Bill Smith, he loves his prospects. But what we need to do is kind of do like that Nolan Jones trade, make a move for a prospect that we love, but we just don't have a spot for him, right? And I feel like the Rockies, they were higher on Adele Amador than Juan Brito. Now, don't get me wrong. Juan Brito is going to be a very good second baseman for Cleveland. Maybe not a whole lot of power, but he's going to be a very, very good second baseman. Make a trade like that, make a trade for Sterling Thompson or somebody like that, Yankiel Fernandez. Even though I love Yankiel Fernandez, I really want to see him in Rockies uniform. But if you have to make a trade for that to get pitching in return, good pitching prospects, then you got to you got to pull the trigger, right? And so we just want to see a little bit more creativity when it comes to, free agency or just trades in general. So that's what we're really looking at, and that's what I'm hoping for. That's what we're hoping for. Um,
Well, real quick, what else? Just a quick comment to you with what you said there. If a team asked me, hey, could we take one of your prospects ranked from 3 to 10 and then one of the prospects from 26 to 30 on your top 30 list, we'll give you our closer. And I'm talking, this is an elite closer. And you pick one of them, and I like it, and I like which one is this, done. I make that trade, especially if the guy is Mason Miller. I make that trade.
yeah.
I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah. And see, it just, we want to see more. Like, it's not like the Rockies, they need to be making moves like right now, but
No.
it just, in a rebuild year, you expect them not to do much because there's nothing really much to do. The Rockies don't have a large market. Obviously, they're a mid-market team, but they're not going to spend money like the Dodgers, Yankees, and Padres and Giants and all these other teams, or even the Athletics, who have had a weird offseason, and the Angels too. Even though the Angels have more money, but the Rockies, they should not be spending a whole lot of money this offseason because there isn't really a lot of money that needs to be spent. It's just there's not a lot of roster spots open right now, and it's just you're kind of in a tough position right now, to where when you start getting into that competitive window, then you can start thinking about adding free agents to your team. And granted, pitching is not going to be hard to come by, right? You got to develop them. But when it comes to hitting, then you can start thinking about getting free agent hitters coming to Coors Field. Very much similar to 2017, despite the signing and the player that we got, Ian Desmond. The Rockies, they got Ian Desmond off the free agent market when they were ready to compete, right? And even though Ian Desmond didn't do extremely well in Colorado, he was able to at least somewhat carry the team. Was one of the carriers to help the team get in the playoffs in 2018. And he wasn't there. I don't think he played a full year in 2017. I think he had that injury. But yeah, it's just we want to see something like that for the Rockies. But again, I don't expect it this year, nor should we expect it. It's a rebuild year, and I think at the end of the day, when we cross the bridge, if you want to call it that, we're still looking at a 100-loss season. As much as I don't want to say that, and as much as I want to see, I would be happy to see a 95-loss season instead of 100. It's to be expected. I'm expecting it. It's another rebuild year, but I will say this though, the way where the Rockies do avoid 100 losses this year is to see big performances from the guys that we saw last year, or guys that were underperforming last year and had big comeback years this year. And I'm talking Nolan Jones. And yeah, I mean, if you look at the lineup, honestly, Tom, there isn't really one player in that lineup from last year. It's just like, yeah, we need him to have a big bounce back here. The only player I can think of, I don't know about you, but the only player I can think of is Nolan Jones, because Tovar had a good year. Ryan McMahon, he had a decent year. It was a Rymack type of year. Britton Doyle, breakout year. Who else? Hunter Goodman had a good year. Michael Toglia had a good year, considering his previous year.
In limited time, yeah.
In limited time, yeah. So really, honestly, Tom, the only player I can think of that we're kind of banking on having a comeback year is Nolan Jones, right? I'd assume.
Well, real quick, one second. Sorry, everyone, I had to spare the cough. Anyway, what I would say, real quick comment on people freaking out about Britton Doyle. He's under team control till after the 2029 season, so don't worry about it. He's not getting moved anytime soon, and the Rockies are not going to just jump at it for an extension at this point. And I know he's trying to settle his market a little bit, so don't worry about that. Now, back to what we're talking about. The only guy who I could think of in terms of position players is obviously Nolan Jones. I'm going to say this too. Also, I would like, again, I don't want to kind of use the phrase, beat the worn down drum, or beat the loose drum. I think it's beat the loose drum. I don't want to say, or you can say, all right, I don't want to beat the dead horse here, but I would like to see a little bit more of little bit more production out of Kyle Freeland. Now, again, he was injured twice this season. He's had rib problems. He's had back problems. I just would like to see him. I don't know. Some people are going to come at me and say, "Oh, Tom, quit talking about Kyle Freeland. He's trash. He's toast. He's done." Well, bottom line is he is our veteran leader that we have in that rotation. I mean, it's better than relying on him is better than relying on Antonio Sensatella because I don't know what we're going to get out of him. No, nothing against Antonio Sensatella, but the guy hasn't pitched in several years. So, but I would think the most likely one that we would want to see come back because we know we really want him to be part of our future. That's Nolan Jones, and he's one of those guys I mentioned earlier who has the potential to have hit more than 25 or more home runs. Trying to think of another one. I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head. I mean, there's other guys you could think of, but they're off. They're not. They're no longer on the team anymore. Well, I guess I could say also. Not actually. That's all I'll say. I'll agree with you. I think it's only Nolan Jones. Only Nolan Jones. No, I can't think of anybody else that we could that we would want to see off the top. That's who we want to see.
Yeah, that's for players, but like for pitchers, like you said, Sensatella, Marquez, Freeland, a little bit of a
Marquez.
So.
I'm sorry, I forgot about him.
Marquez.
Sorry, Marquez. Don't be mad at me.
Marquis. He's if he's healthy, the dude can be really really good, and I know that his 2022 season was pretty bad after his All-Star season in 21. It's just he's been barred with injuries, and I'm not saying it's it for him. But he's still young, like he's 29, 30 years old. And it's still crazy to think because you would think that after being with the Rockies and being with the Rays system before he got traded over here in 2016, you'd think that he's kind of around early 30s. But no, Marquez is still fairly young, 29, 30 years old. So we're hoping that he's healthy because if he's healthy and the rotation's healthy, which is always a big if and generally doesn't happen, but hey, one of these years could work out to where it could work. And the Rockies, they didn't suffer with a whole lot of injuries. If I remember correctly in 2022, but it just, we're hoping for, comeback years from, some of those guys. But yeah, I feel like this year is a make or break situation because if the Rockies don't do well, of course we mentioned this at the end of the year that the Rockies lose another 100 games in 2025, Bud Black is losing his job. There's no way that he should continue having the job after, having a team lose 3 consecutive 100-lot seasons. We're really hoping and banking on that changing this year. If we see some sort of improvement to where the Rockies only lose 95 or 90 games, then yeah, like I'm for Bud Black staying, but it just, we cannot see, a 100-lot season. Now, if it happens, I want to see the Rockies do something in that position of manager and switching that out with Bud Black because something's not working. If it's just like, the Rockies are very gracious and we already know that, but this is the last time. Like this is the last year. Like if you can't turn this team around from back-to-back 100-lot seasons, and of course the first 2 times in Rockies history to lose 100 games, you got to change something, man. You got to turn this franchise around. You have to change philosophy, in terms of management or whatever. But Bud Black, we know Bud Black is very much a baseball lifer. He's somewhat of a conservative coach. He's a oldie but a goodie, if you want to call it that. Kind of similar to Sean Payton, who's very conservative in his play calling. That's who Bud Black is. And so sometimes it can be a good thing. Sometimes it can be a bad thing. And see, that's the thing too. Like we want to see Bud Black think outside the box, be a little bit more creative when you when it comes to stealing bases or just whatever. Or, again, he's a pitching manager or he was a pitching guy when he was, he was a pitcher for the Royals, right? And he was a part of the Angels staff when they won the World Series in 2002, right? So we want to see a little bit more creativity from everybody in the front office, management. Just be a little bit more creative, think outside the box. Don't be, just don't do the regular. Don't be comfortable with what you've been doing for all this time. Be a little bit, think out, like I said, think outside the box. I think to wrap this all up, I think our resolution is just to see this team show some sort of hope. And I know it's very hard to come by here in Colorado at 20th and Blake, but we want to see some sort of hope for 2026 that, hey, we can make a run for the wild card. And again, it's almost impossible, it feels like, especially in the division that we're in, because Corbin Carroll this past week just signed a 6-year deal with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And fortunately, as Tom and I, we were celebrating before we got in here tonight that it's not the Dodgers. It's just it's a pain because it's just like, man, when can we get a break? And so it's just we're kind of looking forward to when divisions realign, when we get expansion, when the Rockies will be aligned, which it would be stupid if Major League Baseball did not realign us and kept us in the West and they moved like San Diego or Arizona to, you know, NL South or whatever, if they would have a South League. But I don't anticipate that. But it's just it's almost unfair for us to be in a division like this to where we have at least 3 teams that are, very, very competitive that have been in the playoffs over the last couple of years, and they've had good success in the recent past, minus the Giants. Granted, they won those 3 championships in the 2010s, but the Giants, they have been kind of sitting dead in the water for all these years. And even some people don't really know what they're doing right now. Like, what are the Giants doing? And I think you can kind of expect now our predictions will come, in another month or so, but I think we can already assume that the Giants will probably finish 4th in the division this year. Some could even argue that if the Rockies have a big year in 2025, Tom, the Rockies could sneak up and get number 4, and the Giants go to number 5. But I think talent-wise, the Giants might be a little bit better than the Rockies. But I don't know. Maybe if you're the Rockies, you want to get that 4th place spot because how awesome would that be to try to at least try to get play for 4th place, try to beat those Giants, and maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's what the Rockies should do. Like treat this as, hey, we're playing for 4th place. I know that sounds very much like an organization that might not, that sounds like it doesn't want to win, even though it does want to win. Let's try to play for 4th place. But I think it's a big motivator too, because of course the Rockies haven't seen 4th place in years. So it's just maybe it's a motivating factor for them to play out the Giants and try to play for that 4th place. So I don't know. What do you think?
It's easier said than done, I would like to think, but
Uh-huh.
it's unfortunate that we're setting expectations. The drive for 4th place, or let's try to finish under 100 losses. I'm not trying to be a
Yeah.
negative Nancy here or a negative Nelly. Um, it's just, yeah, this is. I mean, to me, the benchmark to me would be 91 and between 91 and 95 wins. That's the
Mhm.
benchmark. Shoot for it. And when it comes to manager, I'm sorry, Bud. I think this, because who knows? Bud might be thinking about retirement. I
Yeah.
mean, he's in his late 60s. I'm not sure. I can't remember how close he is to 70, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's thinking about retirement because let's face it, being a manager for as long as he has, it takes its toll on you. The travel, the hours, the
Mhm.
commitment, the time commitment, everything. It takes its toll on you. And not to say Bud can't handle it, but it's just, it wouldn't surprise me if there's a transition plan in the works. I mean, hey, Scott Service is still out there. He's got Rocky's ties. So that's that would be that'd be a really good hire. Not to say, fire Bud Black. I mean, a lot of people have that opinion, but I think this could be a transition year. But when it comes to watching this season, I like to the main focus is going to be development and figuring out, okay, who's part of the future, who's not, who can we keep, who do we want to keep, who do we want to part with in terms of the young players or prospects. And then I think if everything goes as what looks as the way they want to, I think next offseason this team is going to be pretty active. Not necessarily when it comes to pitchers in the free agent market. But like we said, if this front office gets creative, I'm sure there are plenty of free agent targets that the Rockies could shoot for and acquire that could really help this team make I and a number of our followers have commented 2026 question mark. So
Yeah. And another thing too is, excuse me. You want to see,
but yes, let's take the Giants out of
yeah,
4th place.
yeah, you want to see free agents want to be excited about coming here. And when I talk about free agents, I want to talk about hitters because this is a hitter's paradise at Coors Field, right? Uh, maybe not for pitchers, but you look at other teams in different leagues, right? You look at NBA or NHL or NFL, where a team will go through a rebuild for a long period of time, then they get good, and you're starting to see free
Mhm.
agents say, "I want to go there," right? And when it comes to the Rockies, we want to get to a point where hitters want to say, "Hey, I want to hit in Coors Field. Like this has been a dream, for mine for several years, right?" That's what we want to see in Colorado. Now, will there be spots for them? That's a different question entirely. And in some ways, maybe it depends on where the Rockies are at. Like if they're talented, if the Rockies are set in terms of where the guy each guy where they need to have on the roster, then hey, it's all good. But there has to be some sort of player that could definitely help the Rockies move forward. And again, one guy that came to mind. Um, Now he's a free agent after this year is Bo Bichette, and I know a lot of Rockies fans were half and half on him. We made a post about it. I think it would be kind of cool. I know it's very much it was just for fun thing, but I was like curious to see because hey, you know what we've seen before. This year Cody Bellinger is going back to the team or I should say he's not going back, but he's going to the team where his dad played in New York. And how fun would it be for Bo Bichette coming back to Coors Field and playing for the team that his dad played for in the Rockies, right? So maybe in the future, 2026, but a lot of our followers and Rockies fans commented on our post saying that, well, it'd be cool, but there's just no spot to put him because you have Tovar at short, and then you are going to have Amador at second base. And I think we had one or two comments saying he could play third base. Well, again, it depends, what Rymack is going to do, or if Rymack will be here or get moved on. But if there's a position spot in the infield that's open, like third base or whatever, then yeah, maybe shoot for it. But yeah, or even a DH, maybe there would be open to spot DH, especially if, let's just say, the Rockies uh, throw the door or throw KB out the door, right? And so something to
A,
think about, right?
a lot can change in 1 year.
Exactly. And see, I very much like Bud Black. This is a make or break year for Chris Bryant. As much as I've liked him for a lot of years, even when he was with the Cubs, we've had enough. And when I talk about I'm talking about all of us Rockies fans. We've had enough. Like we want to see something. If we can't see something like just 90 games this year, or heck, even 50, and if he just continues to get hurt, I know he's not trying to get hurt. And I know some people saying, "Oh, he's trying to get hurt on purpose just to get the money." I disagree. It's just there are players out there that just cannot help it whatsoever. Like he is the most unluckiest player in the history of sports. I feel like, or at least in a long time. It just this is it. Like if KB fails to have another, or it fails to get on the field this year, he's out. He should be out. And he's our highest paid player. But if you want to pay free agents in the next couple of years, bring on free agents to the roster to help compete, then you got to cut somebody loose. It's either going to be Rymack or Chris. And I think the one I would be looking at first would be definitely Chris Bryant. Nobody's going to really want to pay for that contract. Nobody's going to really want him on their team if he's going to continue getting hurt. So you just hope that he doesn't turn into a Russell Wilson type of scenario where he goes to a different team and then he starts playing well. That's just something that we're not looking forward to. But it's just, come on, KB, we need to see you. We need to see you because we're paying you a bunch of money. You're our highest paid player. Just stay healthy. Just stay healthy, and we'll be okay with that. I know a lot of fans were booing him at the start of this past year when he went like over 20 to start the year, and I remember at Coors Field opening day, I think there was some boos in there, but yeah, we just want to see something from him, even if it's just staying on the field. So yeah, that's what we're looking at right now. But anyways, if you guys have any resolutions for the Rockies, let us know. Like, let us know on Instagram. Drop them in the comments below on YouTube or X or Instagram. Let us know what your Rockies resolution is. Like, what do you want to see out of the Rockies this year? Despite, you don't have to worry. You don't have to talk about the ownership or management. Just talk about some things that you want to see, whether it's a player or just the offense or just the team in general. Let us know on our social medias, and we'll definitely look those over. We might even reply to you, give us our thoughts on that. If you have any questions, let Tom or me know. You can see our tags right under our names below. For mine is for, I believe, for Twitter. /X. Same thing for Tom. So let us know. We'd love to answer your questions. Well, we can ask you some questions as well. So just hit us up. Let us know. Also, just again, appreciate all of you because we mentioned this on our story. We really appreciate all of you guys for just hanging with us and just commenting and just sticking out with us because, I've been telling a bunch of people recently that we're in that time period where it's very hard to follow the Rockies. There's not a lot of excitement to watch the Rockies or just to be invested with the team. And we get that over here at Rockies now. We understand. But we just want to say thank you so much because I know it's a very hard time to be a Rockies fan. But again, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We couldn't be doing this without you guys. But yeah, it's been a tough few years, but hey, let's have a fun 2025. Let's see where it takes us. Because weird things can happen in baseball, and especially in Colorado, we've known that for sure. So maybe this year this will go our way. Maybe we'll have a really good year in 2025. Maybe we'll have a magical year. Who knows? But folks, I think that's going to wrap up our first show of 2025. Again, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for listening. If you want to watch our podcast, go ahead and watch us here on YouTube. Just go ahead and follow us over there. And if you want to listen to our audio podcast, it's available on Spotify and Apple Podcast. That's also down below. So you go check us out there. If you don't follow us on social media, our Instagram tag and our Twitter and our Threads tag is right below us. So you can check those out. And let's have a fun year at Rockies Now. We're really excited about the future for Rockies Now. We have a bunch of stuff planned out. We have a few podcast episodes that we're really excited about. We might even have a special guest coming up soon. So stay tuned for that. We got our spring training previews coming up in the next few weeks. And again, it's crazy because I think we're like only 50 days away from pitchers and catchers reporting or something like that. So it's coming up, people. So it's time to get ready. Bring out your glove and your ball, and it's time to start warming up for the regular season. So we're going to have a fun year, and hope you guys join along for the ride. On behalf of myself, Tom, and Adam, thank you for watching this episode of the Rockies Now podcast. And as always, go Rockies.